Hi, I'm Susan. I'm from Worldpeacefull, and I felt inspired to read a poem called Encryption of a New Earth. I wrote this, I think, in 2011. Boiling the tea, we sit around the fire of questions. It spits, flutters, and flickers. The embers glow as golden hue. The ambient heat a seductive cocoon, wrapping both form and formless in silence. As the flames dance their hypnotic rhythm, spontaneous, mysterious, and alive. The hard wood transformed by air, wind, and an ancient spark. A life cycle engulfed by time and place. Transports adventurers seeking to explore the meaning of our lives. Lying back in warm arms, I seek to spot my favourite constellation. I look back to touch the reaches of time from the shore of my uncertainty. I feel the starlight of Orion, stargazing. A familiar friend, indeed, a stargate. A celestial equator or midpoint equinox is the turning point of coordinates, seasoned in time. Opening to myths and legends, Orion, a hunter wearing his belt, was shot with an arrow. Was it war or love, I wonder? As ancient folklore whispers tall stories, a message hidden in the stars? Or stars without a message? To question the comet or the long tail. I close my eyes as relativity subsides from my frame of reference. I feel for the absolute in the dark of our ignorance. The cryptic crosswords of astrology and astronomy as riddles hidden by symbols. The mystic and scientific showcasing differing measures of the cosmos from the same origin. One sees a life path linked to constellations and numbers. Another maps a star system through numbers and structured constellations. Systems theory or living systems are curious questions, spiraling in the smoke of my inquiry. I travel to Egyptian pyramids as Stone Age beacons, coordinating constellations for 4,500 years, mathematical tripods of infinite precision, protected by the god Osiris, a merciful judge, the Lord of love and silence, mystery. His afterlife becomes a new life spawning cycles of nature, symbolized precisely in the sky of Orion and Sirius as the start of a new epoch. The Ice Age is in meltdown 12,500 years ago. Uncovered fertile crescents as the wide open mouth of the Nile welcomed new life. Premised a sunrise of ancient civilizations. The Sphinx guards the astronomy of heaven, the head of a human and the body of a lion, symbolizing the ancient zodiac of 2000 BC. As unknown knowledge advances wisdom, carved by hieroglyphics from higher pretexts, opening a secret passage entombed in time. The dusty dusk of civilization reaches its solstice as a sunspot imploding. The spark of insurrection burned as the climate changed the future. Will history repeat itself in 2017 epoch? As magnetic fields firing solar flares, NASA calculates polar reversals or perhaps shifts. Einstein spoke of a pole shift, a catalyzing climate change. Earth rearranges a harmonic convergence. A new Earth emerges out of the ashes onto a renewable Earth. emerging out of the ashes again onto a renewed orbit. As the embers burn down, I fall asleep to awaken to the heart of a new civilization. Written in the stars of Orion that love is peace, and peace is the love of all dream keepers. Actually, that poem was not written in 2011. It was written, I think, in 2010, because I remembered this poem, Encryption of a New Earth, when I was on a camel going around the Giza pyramid, the pyramids. It was amazing. There was an Egyptian man on a horse in front, and he was leading the camel that I was sitting on. And I remember looking out over the desert, and there was a point on this ride where I couldn't see Cairo, but I could see the 3 pyramids. And my mind travelled back thousands of years to these incredible pyramids. For those of you who haven't seen them, when you fly into Egypt, into Cairo airport, the plane will circle around Cairo. And I always remember my first time, I was absolutely amazed, firstly at the size of Cairo, and I was a bit daunted, to be honest. Then as we banked, I saw these geometric shapes from the sky, and I knew they were not made by human beings. They are completely different. It also has been stated that it wouldn't be possible for humans to have made the pyramids in the time frame that they were made. So something actually has happened, which brought them here to the planet. And anyone who's had a look at other pyramids around the world, they're all over the world. They definitely have a symbolic value and a sacred value. They say with the Giza pyramid that within the king's chamber, ceremonies were conducted. There was the idea that the spirit of the king would go to the afterlife, so they gave gifts, did ceremonies, sort of a death to be reborn. So most definitely the Egyptians knew that life went on after death. For me, I could feel the energy of the pyramids. I didn't actually need to go and even look at them. I could feel them. And it was really, really a remarkable moment in my life, sitting on that camel, going around and just looking at the vast desert and then casting my eyes over the pyramids. Then I saw the Sphinx. Incredible. It's like looking back in time when you're there. Very beautiful. There's many mysteries on our planet. And I would say many that are not human-made. When you look at the wonders of the world, even nature itself is breathtaking. When I went to Macchu Picchu in Peru, I was absolutely stunned as the bus travelled spiralling up a mountain at 4:30 in the morning to go up to Macchu Picchu. I was overwhelmed by the majesty of nature. I was humbled by the power of it. And then you look into the architecture of a site like Macchu Picchu. They have no mortar in their building construction. They even had toilets. They were very sophisticated. Drainage was there. These incredible walls, all precisely built, imbued with the sacred, and the practical, were side by side. They were very advanced. I was very fortunate because I was able to go with one of the first groups to climb Wannu Picchu, which is the large mountain behind Macchu Picchu. It's very steep. And the last part of that climb, you have to hold on to a chain and you're literally pulling yourself up. So I don't think elderly could manage that. Tiny little steps as you're climbing. And there were certain points where I stopped and I overviewed all the other mountains around me. There was mist at my feet, and I looked out across at these incredibly huge mountains. I meditated there. I sat there very quietly and just connected with nature. And as you look back down over Machu Picchu, you see a giant condor. It's actually been built in the shape of an eagle. Incredible. Many of the indigenous around the world have created artworks which have an overview looking down. They conducted spiritual practices where they actually left the body. There's a lot to this. Some Westerners come to places like South America to try the, forgotten what the name of it is now because I've never tried it, but you can take something to actually give you an altered state. I personally don't believe in those types of things. I think just let life happen naturally. The sacred is around us all the time anyway, and all that really is the great mystery, which is life. It's all about the orientation of how you choose to see. You know, if you're an engineer, you're going to look at the engineering. You know, if you're a teacher, you're going to learn a lot about it. You're going to learn the history. If you're into peace, you're going to look at the spiritual side of the life that they've lived. Whatever orientation you have, you certainly won't walk away disappointed. You'll walk away the better for the experience. That's why travel is such a wonderful thing. It expands who you are. I had an experience when I was in Carew, and I stayed with an Egyptian and an American journalist. And my lovely Egyptian friend, she made sure that I got on this local bus. Now, it's all in Egyptian characters. There's no way I could read it. She gave me a piece of paper written in Arabic, you know, where I lived. So if I got lost, I could just show a taxi driver in Arabic where I live. And so I was on the bus, and then she, you know, gestured to me to get off the bus and go to the railway station. It's an underground, like the London Underground. They have a very modern underground. Mostly women travel on the underground there. They don't drive. So I got on an underground train, saw a few young people, mostly women on there. It was nice. And caught the train to Giza, got off at the Giza station. Now, I'm very open to life and I tend to move through life unafraid. I was approached by an Egyptian man who was a Bedouin, and he asked me if I would like to go for tea with him. My inner feeling was, yes, let's go. So I did. I'm not naive. I've been everywhere. But I remembered the trust that I had. It was amazing. He took me onto one of the local buses. Again, I had no idea where he was taking me. He paid for my fare. He took me to where he lived, close by, and he took me to a tea house. He bought me tea. We sat and talked. I told him I was a peace clown and into world peace. He told me about his wife and his child. He had a baby. And we talked and exchanged culturally. Then he took me to Giza, to the actual pyramids, and I had a feeling he could possibly be in league with the camel guy, and I didn't mind. I have the power to say no if I want to. And so he took me to meet this camel man who also had shops, quite a few shops there, but oils was what he was selling. It was very beautiful. It was air conditioned at the place I sat in. Gave me water, but I didn't have a lot of money. And at the time, my sort of inner feeling was just to be near the pyramids. I didn't actually need to go and look at them. And I told this to this man. who was hoping to sell me a camel ride. And I started to cry because I felt inspiration around the pyramids. And it was really funny because he was I think he was asking for £200 for a camel ride, and I was saying no. But my inner feeling was, if he offers 100, I'll go. And he did. When I cried, he dropped the price. The power of tears. It was inspiration I was feeling, though, at the time. I really felt the energy. It was amazing. And that's how I got the camel ride. So had I been a suspicious Westerner, I wouldn't have gone to the tea house with this beautiful Bedouin man. I wouldn't have trusted enough to be taken to this camel man who did give me a cheaper price. And I wouldn't have had the experience of going around those pyramids reflecting on Encryption of a New Earth. So I feel very grateful and very honoured that I met these people. I very much love the Egyptian people. I thought they were really incredible. I walked around the streets by myself. I was not accosted. I feel a deep respect for all people. Some of them were sitting there smoking pipes. I was looking at the washing, hanging. And when I caught the train to Alexandria, which is on the Mediterranean, I was actually going to a peace centre that Mubarak, at the time he was in power, his wife Suzanne was running this peace centre, and they were looking at Middle East conflict. And I remember catching the train, and every now and then you see a satellite dish, and I always laugh. Even when I was up in Nepal, up in the Himalayas, in a remote part of Nepal, you'd have to access it by four-wheel drive, and we did. It was rough. No tourists go there. And I remember seeing a satellite dish in a village, a really primitive village. So our world has changed enormously. There's communications all over the place now. But going back to Cairo, and on my way to Alexandria, I was marveling at the cultivation of the desert. You could think of Israel and how they cultivated the desert there as well. It was incredible. And I went to Alexandria and I couch surfed with a few people there. Heard a few stories from people who were living there about what was going on with the regime. Some people were taken away and incarcerated. And I couldn't have imagined at that time in 2010 that there was going to be this terrible conflict that happened, the Arab Spring, where Mubarak be removed from power and Muslim Brotherhood would come in. From that perspective of 2010, it seemed very peaceful. And what I did was I went to the railway station and I had my juggling balls and juggling club with me because I take all my things with me. And I remember standing on the platform and I decided to do an experiment. And I leaned up against the bin and I started juggling balls. And just see, Western woman, blonde hair. I wasn't dressed as a clown. Just started juggling to see what they do. And before I knew it, I had a crescent of men all the way around me who were observing me juggling and smiling. Some of them didn't smile, actually, but I didn't take that as a problem. That's just cultural. The women were standing behind the men. It was fascinating. And here I was juggling away. And I then pulled out my clubs. This is the big long clubs. And I started juggling them. And one of the men said to me, "Where are you from?" I said, "Australia." He goes, good country. There we go. That was diplomatic relations with the Muslim people. Yes, they're very beautiful people, and they're not what they're typecast to be in the world. They're the most hospitable, warm people I've ever met. And I've met quite a lot of Muslims now because I've travelled to a lot of countries. I've travelled to more than 20 now. But on that platform, all those men, they surrounded me as I juggled, and they were respectful and enjoying that moment. And then the police came And they broke it up because in Cairo, in Egypt, inclusive of Cairo, any cities anywhere in Egypt, you can't gather. So what my juggling showed me was how people were suppressed in those countries. And I wouldn't have known that as a Western tourist, wouldn't have known. So in a way, being, a clown or a person who's juggling, you can get an idea of what happens when people gather. And that's always a sign of a repressive state. They don't want people talking, you see. They don't want uprisings, so they suppress them. It was very fascinating because I remember seeing all the big billboards, with the Mubarak's face on it. And you'd see the tanks. They'd have big paintings, big billboards of tanks and weapons, fairly primitive ones. And you'd see the beautiful mosques in the middle of Cairo. When you hear them singing, it's very beautiful. We live in a great diversity in humanity. And going back to the Egyptian pyramids, I would say that civilization at that time was very much an advanced civilization, very much delving into the mysteries. And the wisdom is that we are one with the cosmos. So I'm certain that they would have very strong cosmic view. Again, that idea of harmony comes to me, It's not about people conforming to the way that we think. We get so used to our own worldview that we think the whole world should follow it, but they shouldn't. They should live as they live. And what I've learned from other cultures is there's much I can learn from them. I saw in lots of other cultures where family was placed at the centre, and they really valued aunts, uncles, grandparents. Many of them lived in the same house. I saw people in great poverty, where they might have a hose, that's the shower. It's just a hose. Very primitive cooking, very primitive little houses in some places. I'm thinking of Mexico here and some of the places I was sort of staying in. I was couch surfing all over the world. I've lived in makeshift places called guest houses, which were really made out of wood, out of boxes, packing boxes. And they have the squat toilets, and it's very different from the West. And you have to adapt to their way of life. And it's really refreshing to see such difference. So for me, my world trip was like an encryption of a new earth. It was to learn that we are same, but different. And that we are here to create great harmony across the planet. It's time for peace now on this planet. We have to start to think and see the world in a different way. And all I can offer from my own experience as having been a clown, where my intention has been to love others unconditionally, I have seen the oneness of humanity. I have seen enormous beauty in every face. Unbelievable. Excuse me. With that, I send love and peace to you all.